Welcome back to History Class with Dr. W and our continuing discussion of Vietnam. In our previous lecture, we talked about a period of Vietnamese independence which lasted until 1406 CE. In this lecture, we'll talk about the end of that period of independence and the dynasty that launched the new conquest from China, the Ming Dynasty. The Ming Dynasty reasserted Chinese control over Vietnam and much of Southeast Asia. Ming forces invaded and toppled Hanoi in 1406, ending the Tran Dynasty and the period of Vietnamese independence. The Chinese Navy launched attacks all down the coast of Vietnam and throughout the South China Sea, reclaiming the entire zone for the Chinese. The Chinese were the most advanced nation in the world at that time in terms of shipbuilding, gunpowder, and weaponry. They possessed sophisticated guns, cannons, and grenades. No one could resist them. With this military conquest, the Chinese returned to power during the period 1406 to 1428 CE. The conquest was harsh. The Chinese burned Dai Viet books and literature. Local leaders were replaced. And yet, there was always resistance against the Chinese. A rebel leader named Li Loi, with a band of warriors, retreated southward in 1418 and launched continued attacks against the Chinese. While their victories were few, they were able to capture small numbers of guns, cannons, and other weapons from the Chinese. Through a process of reverse engineering, Viet forces were able to then make their own weapons and gradually grew in strength. Under Li Loi's leadership, the Vietnamese drove out the Ming in 1428. While the Ming destroyed much in Vietnam, they also introduced advances in things like printing technology, paper and books, along with Confucian ideas. Li Loi borrowed many of these ideas to reassert Dai Viet independence under Confucian principles. Li Loi oversaw the construction of many schools, a vastly expanded civil service system and government, and revamped the legal codes. Local strongmen and aristocrats were weakened as local rule was assumed by the state. These programs were escalated under one of Li Loi's best-known descendants, Li Thanh Tong, from 1460 to 1497. He further reformed legal and criminal codes and founded the National College. He issued a new pantheon of official heroes to be worshipped. The Li rulers borrowed much from their former Chinese controllers: military science, gunpowder, weaponry, and institutions of power. The Viet also borrowed a colonial mentality, which began to be expressed in their own military expansion. In 1470, Li Thanh Tong launched an attack against the Cham, eventually seizing their powerful port cities and military outposts. This marks the beginning of a new stage in Vietnamese history, characterized by southern migration down the coast and into the region of the Mekong Delta. It is also in this period that the first Christian missionaries began to make inroads in Vietnamese society. French missionaries first made contact with the region in the 1500s, with the first missions being established in the early 1600s. Early missionaries, while they adapted to the local society in order to survive, also began to introduce the Roman alphabet and European habits and customs. Christianity during this period never reached a huge percentage of the population, but a significant minority began to evolve. By the mid-18th century, there were about 300,000 Vietnamese Catholics. During periods of war, poverty, or famine, conversions to Christianity increased. The downtrodden were drawn in by the Christian message of salvation. Christian traditions of miracles and spirituality actually resembled some local religions and mysticism, and missionaries utilized these parallels to advance Christianity. Catholicism gradually joined Confucianism and Buddhism as the dominant religions in the country. In our next series of lectures, we'll examine this period of French intervention in Vietnam and the interaction between those two peoples.